Oh, yeah, throwing it back. Old school. Love that. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app on the day that training camp begun. Yes, indeed. Training camp underway in Ashburn today. It was hotter than hell. It's going to be hotter than that tomorrow. But 90 minutes of work in the books, and Anthony and I were on hand for it. So is Matt Paris, the Washington Times, who will join us for Not My Beat at 5 o'clock. ESPN's Dan Graziano today with us as well. So we are jam-packed on a Wednesday. And today was a really just chef's kiss, perfect first practice. Not that the practice was perfect. It was a perfectly emblematic first practice. I think what happens this time of year is we all get very, very excited, as we should. It's a season of hope and a season of optimism, and that is even more true this season with this team than the other 31 franchises who are convincing themselves on varying levels of reality from Chiefs to Cardinals that they can win the Super Bowl this year. Right? That's happening everywhere. That is the nature of this time of year. But here, because of the ownership change and situation, there is an added layer of hope that takes that to a next level. It feels like everything's breaking our way, if you will. And because of that, I tend to think that we put on rose, or perhaps more accurately, burgundy and gold colored glasses, and see that everything is just going to work out. Hey, well, Chase Young, like, things look good. Like, what if Chase is awesome? And that goes from a what if to a, like, Chase is going to be awesome. And then this defense is going to be top 5. And can you imagine how good they can be and how disruptive they can be and how much that can translate to winning? Sam Howell goes from he could be good to no, he's going to be good. And it creates this forward momentum of hope that is powerful, potent, intoxicating, and not accurate. And today was a great reminder of that, because Sam Howell today had his moments, had some really good throws with really good anticipation, hit Antonio Gibson up the sideline on a nice little rail route. I remarked to John Keim, hey, a rail route. Haven't seen one of those since the Gruden era. You see actually Brian Robinson on a really nice catch. So getting the ball to the running backs well in the pass game. You see a nice throw in a gotta-have-it situation, or it has to put the ball away from Emmanuel Forbes to Terry McLaurin, and Sam throws Terry open on a route that actually Eric Bieniemy called Terry over later and had a word about. But ultimately they get the completion. Had some good balls over the middle, was decisive. Nothing felt super clunky in terms of the rhythm. But he also had a fair amount of misses. And I think today was a very up and down day, and there were certain periods where the offense just didn't move the football. And, this is one of those situations that I hate in this job. If I'm being completely and totally honest with you, today is simultaneously one of my favorite and least favorite days of the year, because we finally, after all the speculation, have actual data. We have actual practices. We have actual information instead of speculation to operate from. But it's all we have then in a small sample size of one. Tomorrow, we will have more than double the information we have today. Today, they practice for 90 minutes. Tomorrow, they'll practice for 105 before going to the full 2-hour practice this weekend, and that was what it will be for most of the rest of camp. So in an hour and a half today, we can evaluate what happened, but we all have to understand we're going to go around this the virtual circle of our listener and viewership and shake hands in agreement that we're not going to make too much of it, because everything could change tomorrow. And so what today was a great reminder of that you have these exciting days where guys do stuff, and specifically at the quarterback position with a young guy with a ton of potential, that you think about what he could be. You think about the arm strength, you think about the gutsiness and the playmaking, and you think of the marriage between the RPO system he ran in college and this RPO-based system that he's going to run for Bieniemy, and you just let your imagination run wild of Sam Howell's going to be the guy, and he's going to lead them to the playoffs, and that's just the start. He's the guy here for the next 5, 7, 10 years. They finally found him because look how talented he is. And he throws a simple ball 7 feet over someone's head, and you go, oh, yeah, even if he becomes that, this is who he is right now. There's an inconsistency with his footwork, with his accuracy, with learning the offense because it's new, with all of the things that says he's 23, 24, whatever he is years old, and he has a lot of work ahead of him. That does not, and I think, again, to point out the dichotomy of today and why today is such a unique day on the NFL calendar is I am saying that, and it sounds dire, and it sounds like you're doomed because it's like, oh, man, he's got so much work to do. But that's the same that I felt yesterday. I've been doing this long enough to know, yeah, now's the time to do the work. And so much work to get to a playable level, let's say, or a higher playable level is the kind of work that you do during training camp. That's what this time of year is for. It's for learning. It's for experimenting. It's for pushing the limits. It's for making mistakes. It's for figuring out the little things that you can't figure out in more controlled settings. And then you take that up a notch in the quasi-controlled setting of a joint practice against Baltimore. Obviously, you have that in the uncontrolled settings of a preseason game. And then ultimately, a much, much ratcheted up and specific version as you install game plans and such into week 1 of the season. And I think today you saw all of that. You saw the promise, you saw the struggles, you saw the work, and you saw that all within Sam Howell's day. You saw some of it in Jacoby Brissett's day. One of Brissett's picks comes on a play where he's throwing to Marcus Kemp, and it looks like Kemp kind of flashed open, and then when he didn't get the ball immediately, relocated. Well, as he's relocating, Brissett throws the ball to where he was. Okay, it's miscommunication. There's some miscommunication a couple times in the back end, and you see guys come together real quick. Hey, no, that's this coverage. That means I have to match this. Okay, quick thumbs up, on to the next snap. You don't freak out about that on day 1. The stuff that you do, I don't want to say freak out about, but the stuff that you do put a little bit more emphasis on is the operation, the tempo. And Eric Bieniemy did have to get on them a little bit early in practice about that. And there were some times later in practice where guys are kind of walking, slow jogging off the field, and he's ready to get the next group going. He's yelling, just get off the field. And I was talking to Logan after practice, and luckily for you, this is a conversation we had into microphones. It's called Take Command, and it is out very soon this afternoon. By the time our show is over, you can keep listening to us talk football. Just got to go to your favorite podcast app, or if you're listening on the Odyssey app, we'll be available right inside it. Search Take Command, and you'll have Logan and I's takeaways from the day. But he was amazed that in this 90-minute practice, they got off as many plays as they did. The tempo of everything is so much faster now, and they do so much more with the way Bieniemy's got it structured than what they did in the past, what they did in the past with Scott Turner. I think one of the things that's going to be interesting over the next couple of days is to see if they up the number of plays dramatically, or do they add more individual periods and more special teams periods to kind of beef out the hour 45 tomorrow, an hour and a half, in 2 hours on Friday or Saturday, whenever their third practice is, where today it's just an hour and a half. But these are the kinds of questions that are not critically important. They're interesting, but there's no necessarily wrong answer, and it's things that we'll watch as time goes on. Of course, the big story in the press afterwards, press conferences, questions or lines of questioning was about the ownership change, and we will hear more from the players and why I actually don't think they fully understand the magnitude of this coming up at 4:30. But Ron Rivera also spoke about practice itself. You'll hear from him next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
A new era of the burgundy and gold is here.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And you're really loving this one, huh? Really having a good time over there.
Song.
This is your favorite song?
No, I said one of my favorite songs.
Oh, okay.
Rejoin song.
Yeah, no, it's a good one for sure. There's like a little extra going on so I was like, what's up? What's the extra vibes? Just one of your favorites.
Just me being me.
It's just Ant being Ant. All right, we love some Ant being Ant. By the way, you're rocking the Syracuse hat today. How many Syracuse people were at the at practice today covering it?
Man,
I think we legitimately had 7. There's 2 grad students who are interning for the summer with DC News Now, which is awesome. Does your school do that? No, they don't. There's 2 of us. Had another younger guy that just started at Wavy.
Yep.
You had Kaplan from Fox 5, Scott from ABC 7,
and Sam
Fortier from the Post. That's 8.
Hey,
just saying.
Taking over, man. That Syracuse Mafia, baby.
We're everywhere. Anyway, nobody cares. I care. That's actually not true. There's a lot of people listening and care. You want to know why? Because we're here. Because DC, we got a strong alumni base, and inevitably someone is listening. Go Orange, etc. Okay. As for what Ron Rivera said after practice, pretty straightforward. Business as usual, typical type of stuff from Rivera. But, hey, Coach, how'd you think the first practice went?
I thought the guys picked up right where they left off from OTAs and minicamp. I thought the energy was what we needed, and it's one of those things that you're trying to see if their retention is where it needs to be as well. And there were some really good things going on out there. So not a lot of mistakes. That's a good thing. But we'll see how they are in about 3 or 4 days when they get a little tired, a little fatigued, and see how they handle it. But for today, very pleased with what we saw out there.
I think that is a really experienced veteran take from Rivera. Because first day back, everyone's excited to see each other. We're all excited to see each other in the press tent. Nevertheless, everyone on the field excited to be back. Like, you work so hard all off season, you're just ready to go out there and start proving it. Whether it's that you deserve more playing time, that you deserve to make the club, to sharpen your skills, knowing that you're preparing for a contract year, whatever it is. Guys are excited to get out there on day 1. Day 2, for the way they've structured it, is going to be, to me, the most exciting day outside of the joint practices in all of training camp. Tomorrow is the first day the fans are there, and I think that is going to be electric. We're gonna try to be out there. At least I'm gonna try to be out there 2 to 3 days a week. There's zero. If you had told me I could have yesterday or today or tomorrow, I'd pick tomorrow. That's how critical I think tomorrow is. It's how electric I think tomorrow is going to be. I think it's going to be a really fantastic scene with the stands full. You know, we got a chance to see the stands empty today, but like the bleachers are real. They're out there, like they're big. They cover the whole field. And there's going to be kind of an audience type of feel, and guys are going to get amped up, and it's going to be fun. And then kind of the third day, non-joint practice categories, the first day of pads. That's always when guys are like, finally, we get to hit, and it gets good. After you put pads on, because remember, all that stuff happens. Your first day, your first day in front of fans, and your first day in pads happen within the first 5 days of camp. And what Rivera said at the end is critical. Can you keep the sharpness? Can you keep the energy? Can you keep all of the stuff when you are no longer motivated by that newness? What is it that keeps you going, not just when it's not new anymore, but when you're tired? Because as we said, and it was hot out there today. And it wasn't just hot. It was humid as hell. It was soupy. Like, it was not a fun day. Like, not ideal exercise weather.
Yeah, so some people, you know, with their hands on their hips, like, it's hot out there. So this is expected. And, yeah, they're going to have to, you know, I think it's all about the mental fortitude when it comes to, you know, this heat and, you know, just weathering through the storm ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, there is a mental side of it where you just have to be able to focus even though you're tired. But, like, they're human beings. And, you know, I know enough about the human body and how it functions to know that, like, when you're hot and humid and focused on survival, like, your decision-making isn't the best. And, you know, you're not going to run as fast. And this is kind of the thing. I was actually reading it was an Instagram post, but it was from a guy who has done a lot of hot weather training. He's a very, very good trainer, and I was reading it yesterday. Whatever it's worth, if people want to go through the slides themselves, I'm pretty sure I reposted it to my story on Instagram. So people want to check out my Instagram at Craig_Hoffman and go through these 10 slides from Steve Magnus. Go ahead. Didn't think I'd reference him on the show today, but here we are. But he's like a distance runner. He's done a lot of training in extremely hot weather. And he gave like all these tips of, you know, when you are training in hot weather and say you're used to running a 10-minute mile pace and like you might be running 11 because you need to go based off effort, not on paces because you're going to be slower because it's hot. There's certain things that are just going to not be as sharp or as crisp or as good or as fast because you're in the heat. Well, the problem is that it doesn't really work in the NFL. Like it's fine when you're a distance runner and you're training and maybe it's the summer right now, and you can actually use that to your advantage because you can train now for your race in the fall when it's cooler, and all of a sudden, just due to the fact that your heart rate's going to be a little lower and you can, you know, push a little harder without, you know, feeling like you're going to die, you're going to be faster. The game demands you to play a certain speed. Like the game says you have to run this fast to keep up with Terry McLaurin, or you have to run this, you know, be here at this time to fill your gap as a linebacker. And so you can't just be like, hey, coach, I'm giving my best effort. Sorry, it's a little slow today. I'm trying to do X, Y, or Z, preserve myself. Like, you got to go play football. And so, you know, making sure that you're conditioned to do that, making sure that you hydrate and get the proper nutrition and all that kind of stuff is going to give you a fighting chance. But, yeah, then at some point, Anthony, there is a mental part to it. And kind of a embracing it almost like, yeah, this is training camp. It's the dog days. Because otherwise you're not going to be a happy person by 4 days in. Your body's going to hurt and everything's going to feel depleted and it's not a good time. Other big thing, of course, quarterback. That is the thing always, everywhere. That's not like Kansas City, Cincinnati, Los Angeles, on the Charger side of the town anyway, et cetera. So how was day one for Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett? Here is Ron Rivera.
Well, I'll be honest, I thought all three guys did some good things, made some good decisions out there. You know, the one thing that's impressive is really has been how the defense really picked things up right back to where they were. I mean, defense had a good day today, put a lot of pressure on our receivers in their route running and put a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks, and I thought the quarterbacks handled that pretty well. You know, also just a lot of good things that we can build from. And again, as far as the quarterbacks were concerned, I'm happy with what we saw initially.
I think, you know, we talked about reminders in the first segment. Today's a reminder of this, a reminder of that. I think another reminder that hit me hard today in observing practice was the defense has a lot of reps together and the offense doesn't. And I think that is the most defining thing for the quarterbacks today is, yeah, they made some good throws. Yeah, they were generally on time. But there was some, I would say, a lack of crispness to the execution and some missed throws and some little things here and there that I think as they get more comfortable and more reps in the system, as they knock off the rust of not having, thrown together outside of that session in Florida that De'Ami Brown put up on YouTube, that session in Florida in months, like those things they'll come back / get better. And so when you have, I think typically the defense ahead of the offense at this point in camp, and that is enhanced by the fact that the defense is old and the offense is new. The defense has continuity, the offense doesn't. I have no major concerns about the quarterback play, which is something that I think is easier. Anthony, I know we were talking on the sideline at one point. I feel like that's easier for us to say now, and even as soon as practice ended and you kind of take a deep breath, than in the moment where you just have this feeling of dread because the offense doesn't look sharp.
I mean, yeah, I'm not really too concerned. Again, I think this is sort of kind of like what's expected of our defense because of the continuity and being able to, grow within the scheme over the last couple of years. So I'm not too worried, but I would, it would be reassuring to see, the offense get better as training camp moves along and into those joint practices with Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, something else, too, that is relevant to both the reminders idea and also the quarterbacks, obviously, is incompletions in training camp and OTAs, but now, obviously, in training camp, they feel so much bigger than they are. Like, in a game, when there's an incomplete pass, it's like, okay, whatever, second down. Here, it's like, oh, God, there's a drop, or, oh, there's an overthrow. And they just feel so consequential. And we were talking about it on Take Command because Logan had that feeling so often during OTAs where it's just like, oh, man. And, like, the one bad throw really sticks out because you can see it. Like, you see the opportunity, and you're like, oh, he's got to hit that. And then you go back, and he'd go back and watch the film and chart. And he's like, oh, he's completing 75% of his passes. He's fine. But because it's anecdotal and because you see it in a way that's different than the context of a game, you actually overreact to incompletions in a way that you would not ever do once you hit Sundays in the fall. So it's a good, again, reminder that it for fans going out and for us, obviously, breaking it down as media folks to have in your mind, like, yeah, incompletions are not ideal if you're rooting for the offense, if you will, but they happen. And, everyone is not a catastrophe. Every overthrow doesn't mean that he's never going to hit that ball. Every bad decision or tick late, like every throw is not a referendum on who they are as players. The entirety of their throw volume over the course of training camp is actually just a small part of who they are as players because obviously what you do in a game matters far more than anything that happens in July, nevertheless, early August. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, it was very interesting today, and a theme that we'll be following over the course of training camp is how players react to the ownership change. Obviously, there's a lot of questions because it's so new, and Jamin Davis and Antonio Gibson and Derek Forrest happened to be the first three guys we had at the podium today for the Commanders. Their answers about ownership, to me, say they have no idea how good they're about to have it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'll explain next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we are streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980, where you can comment on our live stream, and we might just read it on the air coming up at 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's football season, but you know what we're still going to do? Never read the comments every single Wednesday, 6 o'clock. So get your comments in, not only during the live stream, but during, anytime you want. It's the beauty of YouTube, on-demand content at youtube.com/@CraigHoffman, @theteam980, and then full episodes of Take Command are @1067 The Fan. Right now, I would like to discuss something that became fairly obvious to me during the press conferences today following day one of training camp, which is that the people involved in Washington in the football operation do not seem to understand exactly how bad they have it compared to the rest of the NFL. I think Ron Rivera obviously understands. He's been elsewhere. And we'll play his comment in a moment. He gets it. He's been around. And this isn't a shot at the people whose voices you will hear. Guys like Antonio Gibson and Derek Forrest and Jamin Davis. They've never been anywhere else. They don't know what it's like outside of here. And there is a very just straightforward, very football player. I'm here. I'm going to do my job. Nothing else matters. The only thing that matters is me and my teammates and them weights and the cones and the mannequins that I hit and the football and the film and all that. Ownership doesn't impact me. I just play. And I say that to say them not understanding doesn't actually affect their job at all. But what they're going to realize if they're here for multiple years is that their lives are about to get so much better. There is obviously already a massive, massive impact in the fan base, something that Ron Rivera touched on when asked about this today.
You can already feel the impact. A lot of it has to.
This was from yesterday.
From the fan base, more so than anything else. I think our guys have also felt it. They felt it, again, because of the reaction of the fan base. What was really kind of neat, and if you look outside, you see the setup for camp, and the guys really, they're getting into this. And so it's kind of a unique feeling. It's exciting. I mean, I'm fired up about the opportunity as we go forward.
And the fans and their impact, that is something the players have felt. Antonio Gibson actually talked about that in a way that I thought was pretty funny and something that's kind of impactful today when asked about it. By the way, that Rivera quote from yesterday's press conference. But here was Gibson today on taking note of the fan reaction to the ownership change.
You have no choice but to notice it. The crazy memes, the comments, and so forth. But hopefully, that changes how they come out and support us, and the negative comments we get on everything we post about sell the team and things like that. So hopefully all of that change.
Think about being a professional athlete anywhere else, right? You get tagged by your team on Instagram. Justin Jefferson gets a notification on his Instagram. Minnesota Vikings have tagged you in a post, and it's nothing but, "We love you, JJ. You're the best. Amazing. Pay the man." Like, you get nothing but love. Even if, because, why not bring this random football player into it? Let's say it's Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, right? No one here has feelings about Kirk Cousins. Kirk gets a notification on Instagram, and he's like, "Oh, Minnesota Vikings tagged me in a post." Kirk surely sees some of the comments that are like, overpaid, overrated, win a playoff game. But there's a lot of, "We love you, Kirk," blah, 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 blah. If you're Antonio Gibson last year and you get the notification, Commanders have tagged you in a post on Instagram, you go watch and it's your highlight scoring a touchdown or, juking somebody, whatever, and you go to the comments section. Now, they tell you never read the comments. We take care of that at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays. That's, again, a different story. But let's say you are Gibson and you decide to go read the comments because you're 23, 24 years old and you got time and you're just scrolling Instagram like the rest of us. All you see is sell the team. Not "We love you, AG," not "Sick move," not oh, crushed him. Like you get sporadic of those. But for 2 solid years, it was nothing but sell the team. Dan sucks. I hate Dan Snyder. Sell the team, sell the team, sell the team. And by the way, good job on that. I had someone respond to me on Twitter when I tweeted out that quote from Gibson saying, hey, I hate the toxicity, but we did what we had to do. And I do think that fan pressure mattered because it mattered to the legislators who wouldn't give Dan a stadium. It mattered to other NFL owners who were concerned about the bottom line here. It mattered when y'all booed Tanya Snyder because she did not like that. Because unlike Dan, she's not a narcissist. She's married to one, which says something else, but she's not a narcissist. And so she was like, this is bad. I don't like this. I think we should sell the bleeping team. At least that seems to be what happened based off timelines. So now you don't have to deal with that. That is exciting. The fan part of this, A++. Excellent. Love that. But it's more than that. And this is where I don't think the players fully understand. Here's Gibson on how he thinks players are affected by the ownership change.
I mean, certain things, just how things run, but we don't really see that. So hopefully, like now that we have new owners in here, maybe we will see if anything changes, we'll see that and we'll start to realize it. But as of we didn't, that's all I knew. So I didn't notice anything.
I think Gibson's 100% correct there, right? Like Gibson's actually got that correct where he's like, we'll see. I know, I guess the things run, but we don't see that. Antonio, I got good news for you, bro. You will. You will see nicer everything. When things break or things are missing or you ask for something, it will all get done faster. There will just be nicer things around that show up. Eventually, you'll have a new practice facility. Who knows if Gibson will be here by then. Some of these things are bigger projects that take time. Some of them, though, will happen pretty instantaneously. And you'll just see better resources. You'll see, have more staff around. You'll see better marketing. And you might get more opportunities to do things because of the ownership. And some of that is not being Dan Snyder and companies wanting to re-engage with the franchise, but some of that is because the new guys seem kind of smart and like they know what they're doing. And which is why, like, when the thing that the player who really strove this home for me, I was like, wow, y'all don't get it yet, is Jamin Davis. Here was Jamin today.
It's good that it's out the way. I mean, it's one of those things I don't really pay too much attention to, but, it's just keep the interesting things interesting and just keep playing ball.
Here's an analogy that might get me in trouble. Always a good thing to say. Anthony, hold on to your butt. It's kind of like politics. There's a lot of people that don't like politics. And the reason is because politics are pretty toxic. And they're not very fun to talk about because people disagree and they have strong opinions. But there's a whole other group of people that are kind of football players about ownership where they don't care about politics. And that's the solution. Well, it's toxic. People get in these big disagreements. I think we should all just get along. I just want people to be happy. And so you never talk about politics and you don't care and you don't follow politics. I got news for you. Whether you follow it or not, whether you care about it or not, politics affect your life because the politics affect, obviously, who's elected. Who's elected affects the policies that make our laws. What our laws are affects all of our lives, some in more concrete ways than others. Some are very, very simple. Some are very complex. Some are in plain sight. Some are more hidden. But everything from where street signs are to speed limits to the taxes we pay to the safety mechanisms in any number of facets of our lives are all affected by the rules and regulations of the people in place. And thus, politics affects all of us. It, again, often intangible. And that is kind of what this ownership situation is going to be. If all of a sudden one political party were to be able to go unobstructed and implement their entire policy over 10 years, you would not day to day, like from today to tomorrow when a law passes, probably feel a huge impact in your life, for better or for worse, depending on the policy and how it impacts your particular life, right? I'm not making this partisan. I'm making the analogy broadly. Over 10 years, you would notice a difference. You'd look back and you go, wow, things are very different now than they were 10 years ago. And that is what this ownership change is going to be. There's going to be gradual upgrades of basically every facet of the organization. And in 10 years, it will be not, and I'm not talking about like the branding, although that might also change, but it will be in so many ways wholly recognized or unrecognizable compared to what it is right now. And the players will feel that. They will go from having conversations with their buddies around the league and not knowing about some of the things that they're using to train or to get coached or luxuries that they have, to telling their buddies in the league about the luxuries they have here that other teams don't have yet. And those things can't overcome, having a guy who's not very good at a position compared to a guy who is. But they make everyone just a little bit better. And it helps attract free agents, and it helps, make yourself a desirable location for a premier coach. These are the kinds of things that matter over time. And while the players might, and frankly should, have I'm just going to go to work and do the best with what I have mentality, over time, as their lives get easier and their games get enhanced, I think they will come to be very, very grateful that they are on the Harris side of this transaction and didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff beyond the fan base being upset and the questions from folks like me on the Snyder side of that transaction. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we'll go around the NFL and hit some of the top stories from everywhere but Ashburn here on the Team 980.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
It is World Cup day for the USA. The ladies waking up in New Zealand right now and getting ready to take the field. For them, it is already tomorrow, July 27th. But for us here on the East Coast of the United States, a 9 p.m. kickoff tonight. U.S. Women's National Team against the Netherlands. That is a win for the U.S., puts them through to the group stage or to the knockout stage. It would be their second on the tournament, of course. 3-0 win over Vietnam. Netherlands, a very good team. This is a rematch, in fact, of the 2019 World Cup final. Hero of that game, Rose Lavelle, is potentially available to start, according to Vlatko Andonovski. Unlikely she plays 90 minutes, but could start and play as much as an hour. Of course, when she gets subbed off, we could see the World Cup debut of Ashley Sanchez from the Washington Spirit. If you want a little bit more on this game, go to our podcast feed, The Hoffman Show. We have an exclusive preview of tonight's game with the Washington Spirit's Lena Solano, who joined me to preview. That's in our podcast feed now, and that is what's trending here on the Team 980. Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So there are some times when I look into the producer's studio in the break and I see Anthony just getting it, dancing, and I don't know what song he's about to play. Like, I can't hear unless he just cranks it. But I didn't know what was coming. I saw you hitting all kinds of everything, and I was like, I don't know what hype is about to happen through these speakers, but and now I know. Drake, Jumpman.
I had this song. It played on my Pandora station earlier today, and I was like, wow, I don't remember the last time I heard Jumpman. So
it's good.
Yeah.
Drake's had an interesting week, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
Very interesting. I haven't caught up on any of the details. Nevertheless, all of them. I just feel like there's been a lot of Drake memes floating around the internet this week, and I need to get caught up.
I'm steering clear of the memes just because I'm going to see him on Friday. And a lot
you don't want
of
to be
it
thinking
stems
about all the
from-
memes?
Yeah, from his concert. Yeah. And I do know that he brought his mom on stage and sung her a song.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Good for Mama Drake. Good for Drake. Always respect Mama. That is it's clearly the lesson here. Matt Paris is going to join us apropos of absolutely none of that. Coming up in just a few minutes for Not My Beat. ESPN's Dan Graziano in the next hour as well. Right now, a quick trip around the NFL. So much happening in all facets. Guys showing up that we didn't expect. Guys not showing up that we did or didn't expect. The biggest one, of course, in the division is Saquon Barkley. And we'll talk to Graziano about this in a little bit. I thought he was going to play hardball, at least for like a week. And in part, certain vets hold out because they don't want to be in training camp. And if you can cut 4 or 5 practices out of your training camp and then just go ball out and you might get a little bit of extra money, why wouldn't you? Like, you don't want to live in it, like, depending on where you're at. I don't know where the Giants have training camp. I think they're a team that does it at their facility. So they probably just live at home or at worst, they're in a hotel. But, like, you got these teams that go to dorms. Like, if I'm a 12, 15, $25 million a year NFL player, and I could literally buy the dorm, I don't want to live in a dorm. If I can buy an extra week not living in a dorm, like a college kid, not the adult that I am, who can afford a lot nicer than a dorm room, I'm not doing that. But Saquon showed up. And like a guy like Saquon, like they probably could have agreed when he did show up to wipe away the fines. It wouldn't have cost him that much money. He didn't exactly get a great deal. It's just weird. I wonder if the Zoom call, Anthony, that the running backs had made them all realize that they are absolutely bleeped. And they were just like, well, I guess we'll show up. Got to see it, call your agent afterwards. And you're like, hey man, we just realized we're screwed. So can you try to get me a save face, like get me some incentives, something? Yeah, Saquon, I'll see what I can do. And then he basically gets the franchise tag that he had refused to sign. It's weird, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's messed up because these guys have no security. And I think as far as like they have years and years of security that they can lean on. And the running backs, just because we know the shelf life of a running back is so short, they just get messed up. And even like a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, he's about to be the Chiefs RB1, but he was a 7th-round draft pick. He won't be able to hit free agency for, 3-4 more years, and he's already 24 years old. So it's a messed up, situation that all the running backs are in, especially when these guys are the guys that are, basically getting 30% of the scrimmage yards for an entire offense.
I hear you, man, but the problem is there's too many of them that are good. We're starting something new on Take Command. We're calling it Take 5, where we do like 5 extra minutes, and it'll come out on the days in between our big episodes. And we talked about it today. To tape that, it'll be out tomorrow. But the simple truth is, if I can pay 85% of Saquon Barkley's $2 million a year each, why would I pay Saquon Barkley 10? Like, the math doesn't math.
Yeah.
And there's too many guys that are good. It's just, it is what it is, and there's no solution. You know, what you can say is when guys way overperform their contract, there is a pool of money available to them, player performance pool, which is something I've learned about, to be honest, over the last week. But, you know, Logan brought it up, and I've seen some others bring it up as well. And like a guy like Alfred Morris in 2012, who was obviously on a rookie deal, a 4th-round pick, rushes for 1,500, 1,600 yards, and he gets almost his entire salary doubled because of how good he was based off the player performance pool. So there is like money available if you outperform your contract in a single season, but to your point, it doesn't provide any long-term security. I don't know what the answer is there, because it's not smart to invest. Like, if it was a goodness of your heart thing, of course these guys would get contracts, but it's about investment, and you can only spend money in so many places, and I don't know that there's a good answer for running backs. Of course, guys who are getting paid, quarterbacks. Justin Herbert, 5 years, $262 on the extension, $262.5, I should say. That's $500,000. I can't just like leave off the 0.5. Although when you're at 262.5, that seems like not nearly as much. And then, you know, that leaves the question now, what does Burrow get? I think he just gets more than that. We'll talk about that with Graziano later in the show. Elsewhere on the running back market, Josh Jacobs still has not reported. I think he could hold out for a while. Because also it's like, if you're Saquon, you're reporting to a team that you think could be good, and like you're building and you're excited. If you report to the Raiders, like you're reporting to a disaster potentially. And so I don't know, like Josh Jacobs has great feelings about the Raiders and great feelings about Josh McDaniels. And so thus I could see him playing hardball a lot farther into the future. Jonathan Taylor did ultimately report for the Colts, but he's nursing an ankle injury. So we'll see when he ultimately gets back on the field. And then you have the guys who didn't report. Chris Jones, he could be playing veteran hooky, 100%. Although he does definitely want a new deal. And the one that I think will ultimately get a new gigantic deal is Zach Martin. I think the Cowboys are screwed without him. I think Jerry Jones, for all of his business acumen he has shown over the years to build the Cowboys into the brand that they are, is soft when it comes to negotiating with players. We saw it with Ezekiel Elliott. We've seen it with Dak Prescott. Guys get paid in Dallas, which is great for them. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing by Jerry. They obviously just paid Diggs monster money. So you find a way, as Jerry likes to say, salary cap, it's fungible. So you find a way to make it work. Zach Martin deserves more money based off of his play level, what he's done, and where his contract is, which is very, very dated. Also, NFL players get in bad spots where they sign deals that are going to be bad by year 4 or 5. And that's the situation Zach Martin's in, but they also do it knowing they can hold out, and I think that will ultimately wind up working for Zach Martin. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Matt Paris, Washington Times, joined us with his first impressions of training camp today here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show, Hour 2 on the Team 980 on this Wednesday. Hour 3 will begin with Not My Beat. That is where we're going right now. We'll begin with Never Read the Comments, meaning your last chance to get a comment in on any of our YouTube videos is pretty much right now. At Craig Hoffman, at the Team 980, or on an episode of Take Command at 106.7 The Fan. So we will be reading and responding to those coming up at the top of the next hour. Right now, though, it's 5 o'clock, Hour 2. You know what that means. It is time for Not My Beat. Confirmed with my own eyes that Matt Paris was at training camp today. He's wearing a lovely purple shirt. Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I had to wear my purple while I could before going up to, Ravens joint practice. So can't wear any purple there.
Yeah, that was a very Ravens purple shirt. I actually had that thought because we were talking about the joint practices in the future, and I was like, buddy, you make sure that shirt stays in the drawer.
Oh, I don't wear any burgundy when covering these guys. Don't wear any purple when over by the Ravens.
And that, boys and girls, is journalism. Okay, let's take a look at this practice today. It's a weird day, Matt. I started the show talking about this because we wait so long to have any kind of information to operate on. And then we get information, and then we try to tell everyone to, hold your horses. It's just one day of information. But it's all we got for right now. So with that caveat in place that it's just one day, as you were driving home or, collecting your notes to write, what's the biggest thing that stood out to you on this day one?
Yeah, a couple things. I think the excitement over Josh Harris is very apparent. Even players and their enthusiasm seem to be kind of brighter, more engaged with the subject when asked about ownership than they were before. Actually, on the field, I thought Sam Howell had a good day. He didn't throw an interception, which seems like an extremely low bar, and practice turnovers, as aren't that big of a deal in the long run, but I thought it was still notable he didn't throw one just because of how, his spring had gone. And then Chase Young, the knee brace was off. He looked explosive, looked much more like the pass rusher, I think, just in terms of technique, kind of how he used to be. I know Keim tweeted that he didn't have that stutter step that he was kind of incorporating in the 21 season. So I thought there were a few nuggets here and there, but it was a lighter practice overall.
Yeah. Do you think that's like a Bieniemy thing, him coming in, or is this something that maybe Ron has wanted to mess with, or just a kind of a consequence of last year with the Heat? What have you made of kind of how they've structured practice this year versus the previous 3 years of the Rivera era?
Yeah, I think there are two parts of that. The first, I think, for today's purposes, had to do with the Heat. Rivera kind of mentioned it, but, I think they're going to start off light and then ramp up as it goes along. It's supposed to get hotter throughout the week, so maybe adjusting to that as it goes along. But the enemy has had kind of an influence over their schedule. Their OTAs practices were earlier in the day this year, and that hadn't really been the case. Practice had always been in the morning for Rivera, at least last year. But the enemy, I do think, is the main difference is that it was explained to me is that now they go do install in the morning and then apply those concepts to the practice field right away versus practicing first and then learning new concepts and applying it the next day. I think it's just to help with the transition and the knowledge of the offense overall.
Matt Paris with us from the Washington Times, of course, their sports writer here on the Team 980. It's funny, Matt, because you say that, and there's just some things that NFL teams do sometimes, and they make a change, and you're like, why doesn't everyone do that all the time? That just seems so much more logical to learn something, go apply it, than, hey, let's go practice our butts off, be mentally exhausted from practice, learn something, and then go home and hope we remember it tomorrow,
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, to Scott Turner and stuff, they had Walkler in the afternoon, so
sure.
It's not necessarily, but it is, there's a difference for sure.
All right. So circling back to the quarterback situation, I don't know. It was a weird day because I think I agree with you. Howell overall was fine. They didn't particularly move the ball well, especially there was that chunk of one of the team periods. It might have been 2 minute, I think, where just like everything seemed to go wrong. Nobody actually moved the ball at all, which is funny because in 2 minute is one of the times in a practice where the ball actually literally moves as opposed to just running the next play from the same spot on the field and putting a different down and distance on the scoreboard, and the ball just never actually moved. But overall, what is it, and both the what and the timeline, do you need to see from Sam Howell? And do you think they need to see from Sam Howell to feel good about just saying, hey, this is our guy, and not having Brissett kind of still floating in the background?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think they have already made that decision. Like, there's not really a competition. Howell took all the first team reps today. I think they've pretty much said everything that he's a starter. I don't necessarily see this as a true competition, but I think they are giving Jacoby Brissett a wiggle room that if Howell struggles, he can go back, he can go in there and get his opportunity. I think they want to see Howell earn this kind of consistently throughout. I think he's done a good job so far, but I just think that they're hoping to avoid a Howell meltdown, but if it happens, then they'll be prepared.
Yeah, Brissett's a great insurance policy. On the other side of the ball, I think this might have been one of the more interesting nuggets from today. Like a thing that I did not have a pin in that I now have a pin in is Jamin Davis was with the twos most of the day. He didn't practice all spring. He talked about after practice when he was at the podium ramping up. But like, do you think there's a chance that Jamin Davis isn't starting for them, or is this just it's an early in training camp thing?
No, I think it's an early in training camp thing, and I also think, he was working with Cody Barton a lot. I kind of have been, I don't know if I sincerely believe it, and I don't even know if I've been floating this take even more as a joke, but I am interested to see Cody Barton's development with this team because in the spring, it's been Khaleke Hudson and David Mayo above them. I thought with Jamin Davis coming back, maybe it was to get some chemistry with Barton, but I do think that eventually, we're going to have to ask Ron about kind of how he sees these linebackers playing out, because I think actually Khaleke Hudson has had a really nice offseason so far. Coaches are really encouraged with what they saw in the Dallas game to close the season from him, and I think he's kind of come on here. So, I think they're still figuring out linebacker pairs, but as for Jamin Davis, yeah, I mean, I think absolutely he's going to be a starter unless he just melts down again, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I am with you on both fronts. One, I don't think it'll happen. Two, I think he'll be a starter. The question I have more of, though, Matt, is does he start at the Mike or the Will? And then obviously who plays when they're in some of the dime packages where there's only one linebacker on the field. What have you seen from how they've aligned he and Barton and how the communication is working that it's Wednesday, July 26th. I'm not holding you to this, and I will not allow any listener to hold you to this either. But how would you project and predict that ultimately playing out of not just Davis and Barton and Mayo and Hudson, but who is actually in what spot?
Well, I'll just go, I guess, more so on what these guys say too. Obviously you have to watch and see what's happening. But Cody Barton has said, they brought me in to be the Mike. I'm going to be the Mike. I was the Mike in Seattle. So if all that holds, Cody Barton is going to be the Mike. Jamin Davis is going to be the outside linebacker. Jamin Davis, played well in both spots. After Cole Holcomb went down, he absorbed more Mike opportunities. But I do think they would like him to play loose and free, kind of on the outside, to use his speed, to use his instincts, and not having to relay those plays as often as, the Mike entails. So I do think they brought in Cody Barton for that reason and to free Jamin Davis up a little.
And that is why we call this segment Not My Beat, because I don't have to know that anymore. I just bring Matt Paris on, and he gives us actual, real information. Matt Paris from the Washington Times with us here on the Hoffman Show. Matt, one of the things that typically is the biggest talking point this time of year is there's some massive position battle, and it's like, oh, who's going to be the starting this or the third that? Is it just me, or are there just not that many of those this year? There's a couple of things to kind of parse out, but is there a major position battle that you have your eyes on at all?
I mean, so excluding quarterback, because I think we all know what's happening there, The one that I would actually qualify as a battle is left guard. But even there, you listened to Rivera yesterday, and he mentioned Sadiq Charles, and don't really hear Chris Paul's name that much, and that's kind of who it's between. And so I do think left guard is leaning toward Sadiq Charles. Besides that, I think determining it's not so much a competition, but I think this team needs to figure out how they want to deploy their cornerbacks and where. How often is Benjamin St. Juste on the field in the slot versus, bringing in, a slot corner to build a three safety look or something like that. I mean, today I saw Percy Butler with Derek Force and Cam Curl with instead of Quan Martin. I think they just kind of have to figure out the orders of those things. And do you consider that a position battle? Well, I don't know, but I think that's more so it.
Yeah, no, that's the only one I could really think of. What did you make of the way the corners played today? Specifically, I thought it was interesting that Benjamin St. Juste and Kendall Fuller got the first team reps outside at corner, and then Forbes came in with the second unit. And then when the ones came back out the second time, Forbes was actually outside with the one. So they actually split one reps today with that, with those guys. But Fuller was the guy who was consistently outside. Do you think that, I'll give you a more concise thing to talk about here as opposed to, hey, corner, can we word vomit? But do you think Fuller definitively is outside now, and the Kendall Fuller in the slot era did indeed die when he got traded to Kansas City?
Yes, yeah, I think. It died technically when they played him.
I guess he came back and played a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he played a little bit there, but
bad, it was, and that's why he died.
It was bad. Yeah, well, I think that's kind of why, you always talk about why scheme is so important, and so why people talk about it in general is because Kendall Fuller is the perfect example of under Greg Minuski, Kendall Fuller was a very efficient slot corner that played to his great, I think that was maybe some of the best football he's played, but in this system where they ask cornerbacks to use their eyes, where they're playing a lot of zone match, he's much better suited for that on the outside. And so I think it's a big difference there. I think Kendall Fuller is still going to have a very big role on this team, but it'll be on the outside. And I don't really think they've given much consideration to him playing inside again, just based on who they have and how it went the last night.
For sure. Did you feel like Cam Curl made a significant impact today? I know, again, one practice, but did you just feel a crispness to them when he was on the field that kind of reminds us why he is so important to this team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens with him contractually, as everyone is. What Rivera has said about you have to, put this on hold right now, the contract extensions, while the ownership situation gets itself settled. He was, I think, priority number one in my eyes, at least, of all right, once this gets settled, let's talk contract extension, because, that we can debate whether safeties should be paid top dollar. And, you look at Landon Collins' contract, maybe that wasn't great for this team in the long term. But I do think he has a lot of value and is really, really important to what they do. And it's good to have him out there.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Matt Paris with us for just a few more quick minutes here for Not My Beat. Circling back to the ownership stuff, Matt, I think it's been interesting as they being the ownership group, the old hog, Harris ownership group, has clearly identified these three pillars of community, football, and fan experience as the things they want to work on in year one. If we look at the football side of it, outside of a Cam Curl extension and green lighting that, if the front office goes to Harris and is like, we want to do this, we have a deal that we like, his agents agreed, green light, can we sign the check? Is there anything that they can do on the football side immediately to have an impact?
Well, I don't know about immediately. I feel like this season is going to be very important for them to get that sort of feedback and kind of have a better idea of what they want to implement in the future. But Josh Harris talked about investing in sports science, bringing in guys. It's not as simple as getting a new cold tub machine or whatever. But if you do read that NFLPA survey, a lot of the marks were lower about wanting to train in the facility or wanting to rehab in the facility. Maybe there are strides that they can make in that area. But it really just kind of depends, I think, on the player feedback. And, that's kind of what these next weeks and months for Josh Harris and company, I think, for them to discover.
And then on the fan experience side, obviously we live a little bit of a different life as media members. You know, we go to games, or now I'm just a studio dude. I do a pregame show and then I go home. But for you going to the games, it's different than a fan who's going. But from a fan experience standpoint, we obviously see the bleachers already and the vastly, vastly different experience that fans are going to have at training camp starting tomorrow. But what are some of the things that you would anticipate changing rather quickly that they can legitimately do quickly at FedEx Field?
Yeah, well, at FedEx Field, I think that, I think they want to overhaul the video boards, make it, clear picture, whatever there. They can update the technology there. Redoing the seats, making them more comfortable, adding tables in the club seats. But, as much as they want to upgrade the experience and stuff, I think they'll just get a boost for not being Dan Snyder. Everyone has mentioned that over the past few months, but it is true. And, heard Jason Wright on last week at Harris's introduction say that the first game is almost sold out. I think they're anticipating a sellout. And so, you are already kind of seeing that boost of people excited over Harris Group before they've even made any sort of renovations.
Do you think they'll have upgraded seats by the time I go to FedEx Field for the Beyonce concert next weekend?
No. I do know that for a fact because I was told that they are waiting for some of their events that they have on schedule, like Beyonce, to finish before they can really get in there.
They should definitely not tell Beyonce that. Hey, Beyonce, we have to wait to get the nice stuff in. She'll just be like, I'll do it. How much? Let's go. Now that's good business, Harris Ownership Group. There's an idea. Have Beyonce pay for stuff. Now we're thinking.
Sure. I mean, hey, get Jay-Z as an investor, get Beyonce as. I mean, they already have so many limited partners, though. But
yeah, I also think that this organization and certain folks in it have had enough of Rock Nation, but that is a different conversation for a different day. Matt Paris with us here on the Hoffman Show. Matt, always appreciate your time, buddy. Good to see you this morning, and I'll see you again out there tomorrow.
Absolutely, you do.
All right, that is Matt Paris. Again, you read his work in the Washington Times, and often a guest not only here, but on all of the podcasts around the Commanders beat sphere, if you will. I do think the one thing, Anthony, that I would add to the fan experience side of it is this. If you can't make a better fan experience because you don't have time to upgrade this, like a video board's a pretty, like, unless the order's already in, it's not like there's a bunch of 80-foot or 100-foot, I don't even know how 200-foot video screens that just exist in the world. Like, I realize it's a bunch of panels, but like to install that stuff, like that seems like it'd be complicated and not exactly readily available. Seats, like I'm sure there's a stadium seat factory somewhere that produces those kinds of things, and they've got a bunch of them. But how quickly can you truly flip a stadium in terms of nicer seats or whatever? What you can do though is make things a better value. This is a great theory that my wife has used when looking for jobs, for instance, right? She had a job that she wasn't super fond of, and what she did was, I'm going to get a lower misery per dollar. So it's like, if I go to a similar job that I also do not like, I'm going to make a lot more money doing it. My misery will be divided over more dollars. Or I could stay at the same salary and do a job that makes me happier, and thus my misery per dollar lowers because I have less misery. And so if you take the misery per dollar metric and apply it to an NFL stadium experience, parking at FedEx Field is going to be equally miserable this year, and in fact perhaps more miserable because people will actually go to the games than it has been in the past. So if the misery is a 10 out of 10, can you make it cost less dollars? Can you say, we're willing to eat some crap on our bottom line for fans to be happier, and ultimately that's going to make us more money because people will enjoy coming to the game more? We don't have time to completely revamp and put in a new restaurant that we'd like to next year. So we're going to keep the one that we have now, but we're going to take a little bit off of our cost on the food and thus lower concession prices. Can you make everything cost a little bit less? And thus, even if you have almost an identical stadium experience, and hopefully, like, you clean up the worst of it, right? If there's a sewage pipe leaking or something like that. If I'm Josh Harris, I'm immediately ordering a full inspection of FedEx Field to make sure that everything that could break is not going to along the sewage pipe, other pipes, etc. timeline. But if you're going to have almost an identical experience because you only have a month to turn this thing around, or even less, and you got preseason games and all that kind of stuff that you can't just have a stadium under construction for, can you at least make it a better value? That would be my suggestion / my question for Josh Harris. How do you make it a better value?
The way you just put that, Craig, I think I like it.
You like the misery per dollar metric?
I do indeed.
First lady of the Hoffman Show strikes again. She's a genius, that one.
Yes.
She is. She's not listening right now because she's off doing one of her jobs for a certain amount of misery per dollar.
Nice.
Hopefully low amount of misery. This is her, she's at the job that she likes right now. So,
okay.
Hopefully low amount of misery today. And we'll see about the dollars. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, ESPN's NFL insider Dan Graziano joins us on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. And joining us now from ESPN is Dan Graziano. ESPN has a ton of training camp coverage this weekend, pretty much all day, every day. Dan's headed out west to look at some of those teams, but he's covered the NFC East for a long time. So, Dan, appreciate your time here on the show today.
Yeah, Craig, happy to be here.
So I want to start with the ownership situation here in Washington, which finally we can say with some optimism. It's done. Josh Harris owns the team, but you're someone who's covered this league, and as I said, you've been around the NFC East specifically for a long time, which I think has three of the best owners in the sport. Three very different owners in the Maras and the Rooneys in New York, and then obviously Jeffrey Lurie in Philly, and then Jerry Jones in Dallas. Could not be more different, especially Jerry compared to the other two. But they all accomplished the job of being an NFL owner in a successful way. So what do you think that they do well as owners that is truly like their role that Josh Harris needs to do to be successful here in D.C.?
Well, I tell you, it's an interesting spectrum, right? Like Jerry Jones is obviously the out front salesman, right? He's also the GM of the team, like incredibly involved. Reporters talk to him first after the game instead of the coach.
Right.
So that's one way to do it. He's been very successful in terms of, the business side of it and keeping the Cowboys brand strong. They haven't won in quite a while, but early in his tenure they did. Jeffrey Lurie in Philadelphia has done a very good job, identifying and hiring people in positions of leadership, right? That can, keep the team strong, keep it as a Super Bowl contender, which it has been in recent years. And then the Maras and the Tishes in New York, they've got a little bit of the last few years haven't really necessarily crushed it in terms of the coaching decisions and all that kind of stuff, but they may have hit on something here with Brian Daboll. And certainly I think, John Mara, as much as any owner in the league, wears his heart on his sleeve in terms of how much he cares. I think those are three different approaches. But I think to your point, owners that in their own way have been more successful, obviously, than Snyder was. The thing I always go back to with now the Commanders is I went to school in Washington. When I started covering the NFC East, I was asked about fan bases, and I said I was kind of offhand. I kind of thought that the Washington fan base was like the most sort of intensely loyal I had ever encountered in sports. And to think that here we are at the end of Daniel Snyder's tenure, and you're not necessarily able to say that anymore about fans of that team, that shocks me that it got that bad. I mean, it's one thing to not win games, but the feeling about the team to get to that negative from where it was, I think that's a failure, and that's probably the first assignment the new owner has is to fix that.
Without question. And of course, the Maras and the Rooneys are always tied as like NFL royalty. The Rooneys on the Steelers. I know that. I misspoke. Thank you for gently correcting that with the Tishes in New York.
Oh, good.
But I think that I think you make such a good point there, and that's kind of the framing that I was thinking about that question is like, when I talk about success, there is business success and branding, and obviously Jerry has done that as well as anyone. There's the winning side, which in recent years Philadelphia has had, and there's also just kind of this brand loyalty, which I think that's the crossroads amongst all three. And one of the things that I've talked about with any number of fans over the last couple of weeks is you can now root for the team and not feel guilty about it. Whether it was a heavy guilt, a light guilt, or a guilt that drove you away and made you not root at all. Like, that is gone. And I'm curious as you've, not only now expanded your role beyond NFC East, but covering the entire NFL the way you have the last couple of years, do you think that there are strategies that you see knowing this Washington team and this Washington fan base as advantageous, good fan experience things, good, whatever it may be from an ownership or business side executive level that the Harris Group can implement here rather quickly?
I mean, I think the stadium is probably a major, I don't know how quickly it can happen, but I think
Sure.
The stadium situation is probably a major project there, right? I mean, obviously there's been nothing but coverage on, how Snyder was unable to get deals done with different entities around there in terms of Maryland or Virginia in the district. And hopefully that changes now. And I think that could energize a fan base. And, I think the biggest thing obviously is winning, right? If they can have success. And I'm not sure how quickly an owner can make that kind of imprint on a team. Obviously, I don't. He's not going to change coaches between now and the start of the season. I'm not suggesting he has to, but my point is, he inherits a lot. So I think there's usually a feeling out period. Like, here, what did I just buy, and what do I need to do in order to make it a success? Now, I think in his case, there's some stuff that's pretty obvious, and I think rebuilding the fan trust and the fan loyalty and all that is a big part of it. In terms of how to do that, he's ahead of the game because of the negative feelings the fan base had to the previous owner, right? So like just not being Dan Snyder is a help to him, and I think that gives him a little bit of a leg up. But yeah, I think if there's progress on the stadium and people can see like cool renderings of what it'll look like, I think that's the kind of thing that get people fired up while you wait to see whether they can build a winner.
For sure. Dan Graziano is with us here on the Team 980. When you talk about building a winner, obviously good players, very helpful. And we'll see how many they can draft, or if there's a new guy doing the drafting and all that stuff after the season. But you talk to agents all the time as you do your reporting and the insider work that you do. And my impression being here, Dan, has always been there's been a bit of a tax that this team has had to pay when they want to get in on a free agent. Do you think that this could even quickly perhaps become a destination that players actually want to come to?
I think theoretically, yeah, I do. I think it's, to your point, it's got a ways to go to overcome the sort of negativity that's surrounded it for a while now. But it's winning and it's quarterback. Like, if Sam Howell busts out and becomes something special, people are going to want to come play with him, right? Like, go back 4 years, who wanted to go to Cincinnati, right? And
right.
Now players want to go to Cincinnati, right? What's the difference? Is they nailed quarterback. So if they've done that, or if they haven't done that, but they're able to in the next couple of years, that'll have a big impact on it. But and yeah, facilities. That's the other thing. You talk to free agents, they go and visit these teams, or at least they talk to their friends on the teams. And if somebody's down about the locker room's this or the stadium's that, then that gets around, and that hurts your chances too. So really just sort of improving the general atmosphere around the team, I think, is the key to that.
As for Howell himself, I mean, I could ask you, what do you think of Howell? We're all guessing. None of us know jack squat. We're doing our best. He's played the one game, got one training camp practice. But I do think it's interesting, Dan, the national narrative around this team in general, and I realize a lot of it is Howell focused. But they did go 8-8-1 last year. So where are you on the team? As I don't want to lump all national media together and throw stones at you from here. But so where are you on kind of their prognosis, and what have you made of kind of the let's call it the consensus national opinion that they're one of the 7 worst teams in the league?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to assume that. I think Ron Rivera's track record is, he coaches competitive teams, and I think he'll keep them competitive. There's just a lot of unknowns. Howell is an unknown. Eric Bieniemy without Andy Reid is an unknown, right? Like, we don't. There's a lot for them to figure out in a division that includes the team that just went to the Super Bowl from the NFC and 2 others that made the playoffs last year. So it's an uphill thing. Now, I'll say this. Nobody's won the NFC East 2 years in a row since 2004. And weird stuff happens, right? So, like, if something happens, if the Eagles have bad injuries or something like that, there's an opening. And we have seen this team, be one that can rise to the occasion. You're right, 8-8-1 last year. So if Howell is good and the enemy's good and their draft was good, can we get to 10 wins? I don't think that's a stretch. So I like some of what they have on defense. I like their young skill position players, wide receiver in particular. So, yeah, I think there are these divisions where we're having trouble figuring out who's going to finish fourth, right? Like the AFC North, right? Are you going to pick the Steelers fourth? Like, that doesn't feel right. They don't tend to do that.
Right.
And I think the NFC East, I think it's tough to just automatically look and say, oh, Washington's the 4th best team there. I'm not sure that's the case. And I think if things break right and they stay healthy, they could get themselves in the mix. Rivera's got a track record of doing that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Rivera's track record, I've said this a bunch on my show, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it now. Like, It's not as good as you'd think it would be because he's only had like 3 or 4 winning seasons, but you're 100% right that like there are a lot of like 7 and 9s in there, and he's consistently been competitive into December.
Like 7 and 9s and 8 and 8s that win the division. So like it's weird. Like it's almost like you have a coach that gets to November and December and identifies the landscape and can kind of say, all right, well, you know, we may not have had the start we wanted, but here's what we can do still. And so, and you've seen teams rally around him and try and do it. So you're right. His record is not as sterling as his reputation might indicate, but a lot of people like him, and I'm among them. He's well regarded and well respected and well liked, but he has also, you know, shown an ability to kind of lug a so-so team into the playoffs from time to time. And again, not saying this year's Washington team is going to be so-so. I think it might be a little better than expected. And if that's the case, then yeah, he might be the kind of guy that can do something with it.
For sure. 2 things that can be true at once. Dan Graziano, ESPN NFL insider, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Again, ESPN celebrates the back-together weekend with special editions of NFL Live on Saturday and Sunday. And then Dan headed out on a training camp tour across the West Coast, so you can watch his coverage all next week on all of ESPN's platforms. So if you had to pick one team in the NFC East to not finish as well as other team, or as the kind of the consensus opinion of them is there one that you think is due to underperform?
I think, I think you could make the case for any of them. I mean, the Giants, there's this sort of, it's become kind of a thing people are saying now. Like, they could be better, but finish with a worse record, right? Because their schedule's tougher.
Sure.
And they got healthy seasons from both Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley last year. Those are not common. And if they don't get healthy seasons from both of those guys again this year, then they could struggle. The Cowboys made a change that they let go of an offensive coordinator under whom they have scored the second most points in the league over the last 4 years. Only the Chiefs have scored more points than the Cowboys over the last 4 years, and they fired their offensive coordinator, turned play calling over to Mike McCarthy. That's a red flag for me. Maybe he nails it, but I'm a little concerned in terms of, why mess with a thing that's kind of working.
I am standing with you right next to you, also waving my red flags on that one.
Oh yeah, so I think there's and the Eagles look great. I think they should be great. They had great injury luck last year, and that doesn't always repeat year to year. But maybe their training staff is especially good, and they have a lot of depth. So they deserve to be the favorites. But man, there are always teams that are worse than we think they're going to be, and there are always teams that are better than we think they're going to be, and that's the fun of it all.
For sure. Barkley reports to camp he's got a slightly sweetened deal, especially after everything that he said. He goes on the podcast and is, saying, basically like, watch what happens when I don't show up. See if they miss me. He didn't follow through on that. Were you surprised at that? And what does that mean for kind of the resiliency of the running back market and their ability to get more out of it in the future?
I think it didn't help anybody, right? Like, I mean, you say slightly sweetened deal, I think you're being generous. The incentives are not automatic by any stretch, and the salary did not rise at all. They just moved some of it up into an upfront bonus. So I feel like he got to the point where he was out of leverage. He wasn't going to sit out, obviously. So he's like, all right, fine, I lost. I'm going to take what's there, and then hopefully next year's different. And that does not help Josh Jacobs get a deal. It doesn't help Jonathan Taylor get a deal. It's not going to help Najee Harris get a deal next year. Like the running back situation is not good. Market factors are dictating that teams shouldn't pay these guys at the top of the market. That it's a reset. It's happening over a period of time. The Chiefs just won the Super Bowl with a 7th-round rookie at running back. Teams don't want to commit major resources to that position. What did the Giants do today? They signed their left tackle to a huge deal. Right? Like that's a position where teams are okay spending. Quarterback, edge rusher, wide receiver, running back in a salary cap league. If you're going to spend big at some positions, you're going to have to find other positions where you don't. And running back has obviously become one of those. It's unfortunate for these guys, but I'm not sure what they can do to fix it.
No, I agree with you. I think the market puts them in a really bad spot. And kind of the prime example is one of the teams that you will see next week, which is the Chargers. Austin Eckler shows up because what else is he going to do? And by the way, I do find it hysterically funny that Eckler is one of the guys leading the charge here when he is the prime example of why you don't pay a running back. Hey, you mean the undrafted guy that came in and was awesome? Cool. But then
They took Melvin Gordon's job when
Right.
Gordon was 27. I mean, like, the whole thing is like Eckler's the exact example of this. You're right.
So he comes into camp, doesn't hold out after, getting a little bit more money. And again, like very little bit more money in the spring. And then they give Justin Herbert this monster extension on the eve or maybe on the first day of training camp. I don't know when their camp exactly opened. But I do wonder, Dan, do you think the quarterback market will eventually curb? Because there's just kind of this inclination right now that the next guy will get slightly more than the previous guy and is going to keep going up and up. But we haven't seen like the highest paid guy win the Super Bowl yet. I don't necessarily think that's straight cause and effect, obviously. Having a good quarterback means they're going to be highly compensated and you need a good one to win. So, but I do wonder if, when you look at what Brady was able to accomplish and what Mahomes is locked into now over the long term with Kansas City, if that slight reduction teams eventually go, hey, actually, that's the right percentage to pay the quarterback. It's a lot, but it's not what we're paying Herbert and what Burrow's about to get and what Hurts just got. Do you think that there could be a correction coming?
I don't think so, because you're going to see the salary cap rise dramatically here in the next couple of years when the new TV money all starts to really kick in as a revenue source for the league, and the salary cap goes up and up. And I think, when that goes up, it's not going to be, we'll keep paying the quarterbacks the same, and now we can finally pay running backs. No, it's quarterback is the position teams are most scared to be without. And that's why you see number 1, number 2, number 3 draft picks spent on quarterback. And it's why you see them making more money than anybody else. No, I don't think so. I think it is going up incrementally, which is fine. That happens at other positions too. Like wide receiver took a big jump last year, but fundamentally, like most of the time, the highest paid guy at a certain position will be just a little bit above the last guy to get paid before him, and so on and so forth. And I think that's what's happened at quarterback. It's just the numbers started out bigger. I understand the reason people make the case. I'm just not sure I all the way buy the idea that you can't pay the quarterback and still win.
For sure. And last thing I'll ask you about that, and last thing I'll ask you in general is this. Do you think when the TV money comes in that the next guy who's up will demand a massive increase based off the available cap space? Like, well, in other words, will it be a percent salary cap type of thing? Because when this happens in the NBA, the next max contract is huge because it is I think it's 35% or 30%, depending on who we're talking about, actual percent of the salary cap. Or will there be kind of this sweet spot for teams to sign quarterbacks for slightly more money than the last guy got, while also doing it at a lower salary cap percentage, and that could pay off for some team that adds the extra piece that pushes them over the edge in the Super Bowl?
I mean, I'm not sure how it'll break down, but the CBA requires teams to spend a certain amount of money, and as the salary cap goes up, that amount goes up. The player's share of revenue is a fixed percentage.
Sure.
So they have to spend that. Right? So I don't know that I understand the concept, right? Like the quarterback wants to say, like, when he's doing a long-term deal, he doesn't want his salary to be outdated in year 5 or 6, which, by the way, Mahomes is undergoing in year 3 or 4.
Right.
So you say, well, instead of set salary figures, then let's do it as a percentage of the salary cap. My salary in the year 2028 will be this percentage of whatever the salary cap is. Teams and owners have been reluctant to do that. I think they'll remain reluctant to do that because what you want in these contracts from the team standpoint is cost certainty. So I'm not sure a player is going to ever win that argument. But, of course, I also didn't foresee Deshaun Watson getting $240 million fully guaranteed from the Cleveland Browns, and that happened. So sometimes, things surprise you.
Yeah. I cover Washington, Dan, so I know that
sometimes every now and then something happens. It's weird.
Yeah, we've gotten some surprises. I don't know if you've heard about any of them. Dan
Graziano, my guy John Kime. I always say I'm going to send him some whiskey or something every off season.
Cakes. I was with him at practice this morning. This is year 30 for him. Year 30 on this beat.
Unbelievable.
What are we?
I don't know what to say.
I don't know.
Iron Man.
I just sometimes look at him. I'm like, what are you still doing here, man? Because it's somehow year 30, and he got here like the year after they won their last Super Bowl. It's been 30 years of straight crap, and he's still here. God bless John.
Do you think
Kime.
if they win one, then he'll walk away?
He should. He should. He should have walked away already. Let's be honest. Cakes, what are you doing? Come on, man. We care about you. We say it. Actually, no. We're selfish. We want him to keep covering the team because he does a great job.
Fans are lucky to have him. That's for sure.
For sure. Dan Graziano, a part of ESPN's NFL coverage on all of their platforms, does a fantastic job. Dan, this was great. Hopefully we can do it again relatively soon. Thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just got an exciting text message. We're going to switch things up at 6:30. Earlier today, I was able to catch up with Washington Spirit forward Lena Solano, talking World Cup tonight. And some of you already know this because we said it earlier in the show, but in an effort to give folks as much time as possible to listen to that before the game tonight, it's actually in our podcast feed already. It's also up on YouTube at youtube.com/@CraigHoffman. So you can go ahead and listen to that there. We'll play a bite or two during Real Things and give you our preview at 6:45. But my guy Andrew Siciliano just actually texted me and said he is available for us. We've been working with Andrew to try to get him on the show. Obviously a Reston native, DC guy, been covering the league for a long time. So wanted to get his take on ownership and where he thinks the team is. So we'll talk to Siciliano coming up at 6:30. Pretty pumped about that. You always love when a guest you've been talking to for weeks, Anthony, all of a sudden sends you a random text and says, I'm available in 30 minutes. How's that sound?
Man, hey, look, you got to roll with the punches, and I think that's what we're going to do here, especially for, our guy Andrew.
They say roll with the punches. I feel like you need to roll like around the punches. If you roll with the punches, you just get hit in the face a lot,
Well, it depends how you roll, though, because if you roll further, like far enough, there you go. Boom.
I protected my face to the wrong side there. Yeah, this is not going on the internet in the on-demand version of this. So we're just gonna keep moving. If you saw it live, congratulations. All right, 6 o'clock Wednesday, live here on the radio is when we do the thing that they tell us not to do. Just hey, can you chill out on reading the comments? It's not good for your mentals. You should really just kind of post your stuff and move on as a content creator. But no. We see you. We hear you, listeners, viewers, fans of your favorite teams that we talk about 3 hours a day, live between 4 and 7 on the Team 980. We hear you. We see you. And thus, despite the warnings when they tell us, do not ever enter those comment sections. What do? Anthony Haney, each and every Wednesday at 6 p.m.?
Mr. Craig Hoffman.
Yep.
We read those comments, baby.
Yeah, we do. It's going to be really funny. Slash is really funny for the viewing audience on that. Your internet is laggy as hell right now. So the sound, one, you're a blurry fist-pumping mess. And two, the sound lag on compared to the video is just not remotely going to be matched up for anybody. This is why they tell us to stay off the internet. It lets us down. Let's see if the internet can redeem itself with the comments themselves here on the Hoffman Show. First, Anthony, actually, call back to last week's Never Read the Comments. We got two things housekeeping-wise we got to clean up. So there was a comment about I made some analogy about wandering through the woods, and I was in the clear, and someone else was like, do like Jim Zorn and make it about whitewater rafting. And I was like, that's definitely a reference to something, but I don't know the reference. Can someone please leave a comment and let me know the reference? Because I did a very quick Google and couldn't find it. Well, someone who I presume is named Casey Reader, their handle is Reader Casey, did indeed do that for us. And he said, Zorn was trying to think of a metaphor to connect for the players in the locker room while he was talking about what they needed to do on the field or something like that. And he asked if anyone had done any whitewater rafting. And only 2 white players raised their hand. And he just went ahead with the metaphor anyway. Someone, I think it was Fred Smoot, said something like, well, I guess that's why they call it whitewater rafting. It was one of the anecdotes that came out after he got fired to explain his oddness and failure to connect with the locker room. I'm pretty sure Dan Steinberg reported it. Reader Casey, you get our trophy this week for best comment, for being responsive, entertaining us, and giving us the insight that we didn't know that we needed. Also, that is such a Fred Smoot thing to do. That is hysterically funny. Also, Anthony, on the housekeeping front, we have to follow up with our guy, Merle. You'll remember from last week's Never Read the Comments, Merle said, I'm starting to believe that the owners don't want Josh Harris as an owner. Plus, Dan has dirt on everyone. I believe Tanya Snyder doesn't want to sell the team. To which I responded, your consistency of bad takes is incredible, because Merle is a frequent commenter. And then Merle said, we will see July 20th. So I waited. I waited till July 20th. And what did I do in my incredible pettiness? After the sale was finalized, I went back to the comment from Merle. And by the way, Merle is spelled M-E-R-L. Merle Garrett. Merle, an absolute gem. But because it's just M-E-R-L, we refer to him now and forever forward as Merle. I said to the We Will See July 20th, we sure did, Merle. And he said shortly thereafter, I'm happy to take the L, laughed, and said, love your show. So, Merle, congratulations on having an absolutely fantastic attitude, being a great sport about us having some fun with your very bad take. And thus, we continue forward with the rest of the comments. All right, this first one, actually first two from the latest edition of Take Command. Logan and I talked about a bunch of offensive innovation and how teams, and specifically Kansas City over the last couple of years, which had a guy by the name of Eric Bieniemy, might have heard of him, and they really effectively started to use their backs to chip in pass protection. And someone, Alan Fish, commented, actually just 36 minutes ago, that he really wishes he could have adequately explained some of these concepts to friends back in 2012. I was never on the RG3 bandwagon, even as a fan, and got a ton of bleep for that. It's not so easy to explain that RG3's play fakes are vastly superior to the rest of the league, though, or why that play was wide open. Would love to chat with Logan about that dynamic or hear him explain what changed between 2012 and 2013 and his own thoughts. Would make for a fascinating episode, if not exactly the most timely. We were also talking about Robert and kind of the, obviously, when you're talking about evolution, and it's me and Logan goes back to that 2012 team that was so ahead. And, you know, what happens is when you start to do things that the league hasn't seen, teams don't know how to react to it. So at the time, some of these ball fakes that RG3 would do, things that he did in college at Baylor, would throw the league for a loop. Because it's like, our key is supposed to be what he's doing with the ball. And so we follow what looks like a handoff, and now all of a sudden he's open, or he's created just a little bit bigger of a window to create a wide open throw. And so that is what some of these teams are doing now with their play action games, for instance, where, in fact, the ball fakes aren't even that good. But if you know the linebackers are reading a tight end or a guard or a running back and the way he moves, the ball fake becomes the least relevant part of the play action. In fact, there are teams that run play action fakes in the NFL that don't even do the ball fake anymore. They will essentially do what is a half rollout or a sprint out, where the offensive line, say, will fake an outside zone to the left, so the widest possible, or a wide zone even, to the left. Just the most left running play that you can think of. And the quarterback will, on the snap, not even pretend to go hand the ball off to the running back. He will sprint right. And what happens is the linebackers see the flow of the offensive line. They see the flow of the running back. And they, even if they take just a couple of steps the wrong way, maybe the tight end that was on the left, on the edge of the line of scrimmage, runs with the quarterback back across right. You flick, the defense is going the wrong way, their momentum is carrying them the wrong way, and you pick up an easy gain. Sometimes, with the right running quarterback, that turns into a kind of a naked situation where he just goes out and runs. Maybe you now get a one-on-one on the outside with a receiver, and your pass protection is the fake. If one guy doesn't fall for it, yeah, your quarterback's exposed, but it's worth the risk. And those kinds of things happen as offenses got more innovative and learned what to really manipulate with defenses as defenses evolved over the last decade, and obviously before that, and things evolve, adapt, etc. On that same post, this was a comment from Tim. What's up, Tim? Excellent job, Craig and Logan. Thank you. You're must listen to. It does seem like EB gets protection, alignment, ship help, screens, RPO, etc. But Mahomes makes a lot of coaches look good. Even if EB gets it, don't the O-line personnel matter? Will Washington be able to control the line of scrimmage to get 2 or 3 yards on short downs or enough time for Howell to hit a wide receiver that is breaking free? I'll add on to Tim's comment. Mahomes is freakishly accurate. So does Sam Howell actually hit the wide receiver? Yeah, absolutely. Offensive personnel matters. And offensive line personnel matters. What I think our point is, and what Logan's point is that what Bieniemy does schematically will make their jobs easier. If you just have to set back and pass pro one-on-one against Micah Parsons, you're dead. If Micah Parsons knows it's a pass play and it's a 7-step drop and you're one-on-one. If Micah Parsons either gets chipped or thinks the chip is coming or has to stay a little bit more patient in his rush because there's a play-action fake or is concerned about a ball being thrown quickly over his head because there's RPO looks, or any of the other things that we're talking about here. We talked about jet sweeps in this episode. We talked about all the different ways that you can create just a little bit of hesitation. And NFL offensive linemen, even at the Andrew Wiley, Charles Leno level, good, professional, but not elite. Those little things can make their success rates so much higher than if they just have to go one-on-one with an elite pass rusher. And there's plenty of them in this division, nevertheless, on the rest of the schedule. So, yes, absolutely it matters. But I think what we've seen in Kansas City is they actually don't have a ton of elite linemen. They haven't in a while. They've got a couple. Creed Humphrey, their center's awesome. And a couple of their linemen are very, very, very good. But they also, in part, are very, very, very good because Bieniemy schemed it up well along with Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and the whole deal. And because Mahomes does get the ball out quickly and he's able to run around and avoid stuff. So, and look, the way teams play Mahomes because they're terrified of certain things that he does is also a factor. That's going to be the big thing. But if Bieniemy can dictate coverages and personnel groupings with his own personnel and by threatening, the deep ball, not just because people are afraid that Mahomes will fling one sidearm 50 yards, but because Sam Howell does have the requisite arm strength and they've got a ton of speed on the outside and they show that consistently they pressure teams vertically, that's going to affect how much you blitz and things like that. Because if you try to blitz and take someone out of coverage and there's a wide open gap and Howell can read it out properly, that's high risk living for defenses that typically don't want to live high risk in the NFL. Never read the comments here on the Hoffman Show. We do this live each and every Wednesday, 6 p.m. here on the radio on the Team 980. Of course, you can also live stream us if you are a YouTube watcher, youtube.com/@theteam980. Go ahead and subscribe, and every single day when we go live, you'll get a notification. It makes it nice and easy to click on your smartphone or tablet, or we will be on your highest recommended videos when you open the YouTube app on your smart TV. We talked to Peter Rosenberg this week, good friend of mine, obviously longtime pundit on DC Sports. He's a huge fan who is in the media business, now in New York. And we talked about the name quite a bit and the rebrand possibilities, and that's where most of the comments are. There's a lot of them, and that's actually, there's other videos that we did where there were comments on this as well. Let's try to get through some of them. And I think the thing that I will reiterate both on the front end here and on the back end is there's a lot of varying opinions on what Josh Harris and company should do with this name. GBRV8IM says, agree, Warriors or no name just for the military soldiers. I think there's a large group of people that like the military connection and think that's a good thing, especially in the D.C. area where obviously we have the Pentagon, we have Andrews Air Force Base, and all the other, military hubs here as we are the center of government. And people will like to tell you that we're the most powerful city in the world. There's other folks that look at the connections between the military and sports in America and some of the almost propagandist nature of that, or in some people's view, and if I'm being totally honest, I see this as well, the propagandist nature of some of the ways in which sports and the military get tied, and it's uncomfortable, and they don't want that. Those are two of the varying opinions, and trying to keep everybody happy is very, very difficult. So here you got someone saying Warriors or no name at all. It's got to be military. Or, some people like Warriors because there's a Native American imagery. I'm also in the group, admittedly, that thinks we just, I think a league run by a bunch of white folks in America, where the history of how we treat one, obviously coming over and basically conquering Native American land, and also how the interactions have been between the citizens of the United States and the U.S. government and Native American tribes since we've been here, not exactly the best neighbors. So I just think that if we can avoid that imagery, I think it's good, because it does feel very wrong to a lot of people and it does hurt a lot of people. And if we can, there's so many options out there that don't have that baggage. And so why not do the thing without the baggage? And that's just me analyzing it, not me going ahead and putting my name in the group that says I'm personally against it, right? If I'm just looking at it purely as an analyst, if I say I don't have an opinion, I'm looking at the opinions of the masses, then why not do the thing that doesn't upset a large group of people, and doesn't cause hurt to the group of people who you'd be naming the team after or using the imagery of? There are plenty of options available without that. So let's go down one of those paths. But again, there is so much here in terms of trying to find where the majority of the fan base is. Nevertheless, any outside group that may or may not be referenced in any particular name, from a Native American group to the Golden State Warriors, who have a lot of intellectual property, and you get a lot of lawyers involved. So, again, complicated. Brian Mulholland says, though, Commanders is a bad name. I can't say literally anything would have been better, but there's a whole lot of other choices that they could have gone with. I'd say the importance of a change on a 100-point scale is 70. Can you live with Commanders if you really want to? Sure. If you stack enough winning and history behind any name, you can overcome a bad name, but that won't make it not a bad name. It would just be an eternal drag that you overcame, and let's count the ways Commanders is a bad name. This is a long comment, by the way, and actually, Anthony, I edited this comment down, but I thought there were a lot of good points, so I'm gonna try to read the abridged version of the ways in which Commanders is a bad name, according to Brian Mulholland, 2467. Number one, it's generic. If you wanted a military theme, generals or warriors, or hell, even admirals would be better. Commanders is so generic, it dilutes that supposed connection. 2, it's a mouthful. Washington is already a long city name. Pairing it with a long nickname is a bad choice. What's worse, Commanders is a word that lacks good rhythm. And so stick Washington in front of it, and it's a mouthful that almost feels like a tongue twister, even though it's not, because the words lack a good flow. I would just like to pause there, Anthony Haney, and say, there are creative geniuses who came up with a whole song, Left Hand Up, that seemed to just fine conquer the rhythm of Commanders. I'm just saying, I think Brian Mulholland, 2467, might need to be a little bit more creative. Left Hand Up. Anthony, thoughts?
I mean, people just don't like change. You know, it takes some time.
I was looking more for thoughts on rhythm in the song, but sure, your take on the actual name
I was
itself.
Getting there.
Okay.
No, I was getting there. It was more so just, you got to find, like, what, I don't know. I don't know how to.
That's very clear. All right, I'm going to continue with Brian Mulholland, and I'm going to get Anthony off the screen. Number 3, no good nickname. Now, given its length, one could overlook that if there was a good shortening. San Francisco 49ers is a mouthful, but Niners is such a natural and easy nickname that it mitigates the Commanders having no good shortening. Are they the Commies? The Durs? Craig has his Take Command podcast, but if it doesn't exist, there's going to be a Going Commando podcast someday. That name is highly mockable. Anthony, should we start the Going Commando podcast?
Going Commando podcast. Nah.
Thank you. Okay, good answer there. Number 4, it will forever link the team to Snyder and remind us of him. The fact is, this is Dan's name. You have an opportunity to wash that stain clean. Heck, even if you changed it to something just as bad, like the Washington Human Beings, it would be better than Commanders because it isn't Dan's name. Sorry for the rant, but this name really should go. It's not like I'm going to leave over it. If it were, it'd have already been gone, but I want the name changed. I think as much fun as we had with all of those points, there are some really good points there for sure. This next one from C. Jackson 1717. Is there a need to change the name? No, but 3 reasons why they should. 1, if you spend $6 billion on your new franchise, you should be able to name it whatever you want, especially since no one is married or attached to the current name Commanders. Again, I would say, except for the folks who came up with the Left Hand Up song. Do what you got to do. Number 2, do what you got to do to win over the fan base. And the vast majority of the fan base really hates the name Commanders. 3, the new name hopefully will be long-term/permanent, so it completely makes sense to start anew and clean the team of Daniel Snyder's fingerprint. I think that those are really good points as well. Like, to be clear, I am not anti name change here. I do think that there are some complications that folks do not consider of how hard this is. And having talked to some of the folks who were involved in this process, I know how much trouble it was the first time around to free up the correct intellectual property, to make sure that you weren't going to offend any particular group, or that, if you were going to touch on certain themes, that people were cool with it. And some of this was driven by Snyder. Like, people didn't want to be associated with Snyder. If you're like the Golden State Warriors and you watch what's happening in Washington, there's no way that you're like, yep, we're willing to share a name with them. And I think now that could change. So I do think there could be more options on the table, and maybe a name like Red Wolves that was completely tied up. And I know people look at like, yo, you're an NFL team. How can you not just sue Washington or Arkansas State and free up that name? Because that's not how intellectual property works. And by the way, that's a good thing. You don't want people with money and power just to be able to sue people and unlock their ideas, unlock their property, and benefit off of it. That's good for things and reasons that have nothing to do with sports names. But if you are the holder of said intellectual property and you get to decide who you share it with, sharing it with Josh Harris and a new exciting thing is different than sharing it with a guy who's under 6 or 7 or 8 or 25 million different investigations from Congress to the feds to 3 different state/district jurisdictions and the league that he's a part of. So I do think that is important to point out, and something that Josh Harris has going for him in a major way moving forward. I did think this sequence of comments to wrap up here kind of encapsulated this. Tim Rakes says, lifetime Washington fan that's super excited for the new ownership. I'll reserve my comments on saying I can no longer feel shame towards the franchise once the name is changed. Then you have RB1991 saying, so far so good. Change the name to Red Hogs or Red Wolves. And then you have Renji26 say, agree to both the comments above. Need 100% to be cleansed from this franchise. I'll be proud to be a fan once that's completed. People are all over the place on this, and trying to find a consensus point in the fan base is futile. And to be honest, this is kind of the last time I plan on talking about it. I didn't come into this segment thinking that, but I'm definitely leaving it feeling that way, where obviously it's going to be a topic that comes up from now or every now and again, and we'll touch on it when we have to. It is something certainly we'll be monitoring in the background. But now with the season going to start, or set to start, and nothing imminent going to happen, and seeing that nobody seems open to changing their mind or kind of gathering around a consensus opinion, I do not plan on talking on this, and certainly hope we have more important and more pressing things to talk about over the next 6 months than the name. I know that's really important to a lot of people. I'm not trying to push that away. And in 6 months, when the season's over, we can talk about it again, especially if they open up that conversation and say we're looking to change it. But for right now, thank God it's time for football, and, just enjoy the season. That's what I would say. Anyone who's like, I can't enjoy it because of the name, it's a name. The football is the football. The players are the players. They're the human beings here that I do think, have obviously been through a lot. The former employees went through far more. But the players, they're the reason, and the love of the game is the reason you fell in love with it in the first place, not a name. So I would just say enjoy it. But yeah, you're a human being of free will. So, do what you like. All right. Quick break. Come back. Andrew Siciliano joins us here on The Hoffman Show.
After years on the Skins beat, Chris Russell talks.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And it is our pleasure now to welcome back to the show Andrew Siciliano from the NFL Network. Of course, he is a DC native. Reston, specifically, an ongoing joke that is also reality between he and I. Andrew, what's up, man?
Craig, good to talk to you. What's going on?
You know, just out here doing the training camp thing, covering a team owned by Josh Harris. What dreams are made of?
How does that feel?
Better than it did previous years.
What do you know?
What do you know? How does it feel for you as someone who grew up rooting for this team and now covers the league? And I mean, I'm sure, you know, you've had so many private conversations over the years with friends, colleagues. I'm sure you have buddies from when you grew up that hit you up and you're just like, man, Snyder. And, you know, now to see what those conversations are like as we were progressing towards last Thursday and ultimately got there, like, what's been the reaction in your world about this?
Yeah, it's a brave new world, and I think the most important thing is to look forward. I mean, we will have a lifetime of stories. Everyone does who's lived through the last 25 years. There were good moments and there were plenty of bad as well to tell their kids about. You know, this era of Washington football. I am old enough, thankfully, to remember the Jack Kent Cooke days when they were winning. Every year, and as they used to say, you could shoot a cannon down Constitution Avenue during games, right? Because nobody was outside. If you weren't at RFK, you were inside watching the game and likely listening to Frank Sam and Sonny on the radio with the TV turned down. You hope you can get back to those days and those winning ways. The league's a lot different now than it was in the 80s, right? Charlie Casserly and Bobby Beathard, you know, can't stash guys on the taxi squad, as it used to be called. And there was no plan B free agency. And, you know, it's not like it was. And you couldn't always trade your number one pick. The Rams can, like they used to do back then, and build teams differently. But you just hope that you can get back to the passion in the community and the connection between the team and the community that you had back then. Because if you can even get close to that and awaken the sleeping giant, then I think it's not only great for all the fans there, but it's great for the league. And the league's a lot different. You know, back then there was no team in Carolina, for Pete's sake. You know, Washington Redskins territory stretched a lot further south than it does now. But there is a sleeping giant that hopefully can wake back up and remind the league what used to be.
I totally agree. And what I've been trying to do, Andrew, and I've had folks on, especially national folks or folks tied to other organizations in some way, and the way I'm about to frame this question, you're going to tick both boxes, is ask, like, what are things that are done at an ownership level that someone like Josh Harris can implement? For those that just watch you on NFL Network, they might not know that you are very close with the Rams organization as you do their preseason games as part of the broadcast. And so, you know, and obviously you've got a front row seat to what they do when they move the team from St. Louis to Los Angeles, and how they tried to build up the fan base there, which had been dormant for, you know, many, many, many years. Is there something that Kroenke and his group did when they got to LA that you thought was particularly smart, would be smart for the Harris group to repeat here in Washington?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually on my way to Rams training camp right now. They're similar, but they're different, these scenarios here. You know, the Rams returned to a city that they had called home for 50 years. They moved here in the mid-40s from Cleveland. They won championships here. They were the toast of the town. And they had to remind people when they came back in 2016 that this is home, right? And they needed to remind people that this was their town. They lost multiple generations of fans here because while they were gone, fantasy football became a thing. While they were gone, Sunday tickets became a thing. Kids learned to love the game through the Red Zone channel, through fantasy football. They didn't need a team down the street to go to and to root for. And I think now you have a similar but not identical situation I think you do kind of have to regain a lost generation. But it's not entirely lost. This team has won games. This team has not left town. This team still has a stadium and a fan base and merchandise, and yes, they changed names. But you still have a sport that has been passed down from father and mother to son and daughter. Like, you still have that, but you have to regain what has been lost, because the young fan right now, I'll give you an example. You know, my nephew lives in Loudoun County. You know, he's gone to games there at FedEx, but he's gone to games elsewhere as well. When my brother goes on the road, and he takes him with him. And he loves his fantasy football. His neighbor down the street is a huge Bengals fan for no reason, other than they're good and they play him on Madden. You know, that we didn't have that 30 years ago. So now you got to compete with that. I think, though, that there is enough there to build upon. And just the jubilation in the ownership change can carry you a long way. But you got to win. You also got to fix the stadium situation. That takes time, but they can do it.
Andrew Siciliano, NFL Network, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So that's actually what I was going to ask you next, because you mentioned, you know, he goes to games, and like that's a hell of a hike from Loudoun County. But also, if you think about what the Rams did, like ultimately, while they played at the Coliseum for a couple of years, they eventually built this beautiful, beautiful stadium that is as state-of-the-art as it comes in SoFi, and we've seen the reaction that fans have to that. It's a destination that people want to go. To you, what is the more important thing when it comes to the stadium? Is it getting back to the RFK site, or is it another geographic location, or is it what they actually build on whatever piece of land that they pick?
I think the fans will come wherever it is, and certainly there's a lot of nostalgia, and you heard Josh Harris say it on the podium last week about that RFK site. My first football game was there against Billy Sims, right? The old Lions running back, and the Lions that sold the program. I don't think it matters where. Whether it's on the current FedEx site, whether it's in Northern Virginia, and for my family in Northern Virginia, they probably don't want to see it there for traffic concerns, but everyone else could say that as well. You know, the old not in my backyard thing, I'm sure will have its day in the coming months. They try to figure out where it will go. But as long as you get that stadium to be a destination again, wherever that destination is, I don't think you can lose. Make it a modern, state-of-the-art facility that fans want to go to, and I think if they put it on the moon, people would be okay with it.
Andrew Siciliano, NFL Network, with us for a few more minutes here on the Team 980. Of course, in order to get people to show up, winning's good. Winning will help. And they are not predicted by a lot of your brethren in the national media, Andrew, to do a lot of winning this year. For you, when you look at this team, we all know the question marks. So how likely are they to overcome it? Do you think this is a team that can legitimately compete for a playoff spot?
You know, I think the NFC East, obviously you have the power at the top with the Eagles and the Cowboys here. The Giants were a playoff team. They won a playoff game. I think they're an ascending team as well, and a well-coached ascending team. You'd have to think that the Commanders, you know, at least on paper, are fourth in the division, but it doesn't mean a darn thing at the time being. I believe in Sam Howell. I think that they, not only with Eric Bieniemy, and that's going to get the headline, but just with the pieces around him, have set him up to succeed. It's a very good situation. He has better weapons than Bryce Young, all due respect to Miles Sanders and Adam Thielen and those pieces. He has better pieces than Bryce Young is going to be able to work with. He's got backs. He has a very talented wide receiver room. Maybe they figure out tight end. I think he will be set up for success. I also, Craig, as you know, I have a lot of family in Cleveland. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Browns. I'm a huge fan of Jacoby Brissett. There were some moments last year, especially early in the year, when he had a chance to win games in 2-minute drives where it didn't happen, but he had plenty of moments later in the year where he was great. He's a beloved teammate. He's a great leader. You ask anyone who's ever played with him or coached him, a lot of people will tell you that he is their favorite person in the league. So I think Sam Howell's got a great mentor, and if it doesn't work out, you got a great guy there to win you some games and to try to figure out what comes next. But it's a fascinating situation because you have new ownership. And Ron Rivera's spoken openly about this. I know he's excited to get back to football. We will see how it goes because obviously new ownerships will always put their stamp on things. But I think Ron Rivera's got enough skins on the wall here to earn a legitimately fair shot here, and I think that's what he's going to get.
If I were to talk to your producers and say, what's the name that excites you the most about the Washington Commanders? What's the thing that's most likely to get the Commanders to the top of NFL Total Access on NFL Network? My guess, Andrew, would be that it's something adjacent to Chase Young. What are your expectations for Chase on the year, and how much sizzle does he still have in terms of his national profile, considering all the time he's missed and the production that he hasn't yet produced in his NFL career because of said time missed?
I don't know that he still has that sizzle. I still think he has name value, and I still think people are, they want to see him play well, but it has been so long. When it comes to the edge rushers, the Bosas and the Garretts and all those guys, you want to go Q rating, if that's still a word, I don't even know.
Works for me. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Instagram power, right? Those guys are further on the list, but Chase Young gets back to sacking the quarterback. Yeah, he helps lead the show. I also think, talking about my favorite guy there, and I can think that it's a guy that I think deserves a bigger national platform. I think Terry McLaurin is must-watch TV, not must-see TV, not only on the field, but that guy is as thoughtful and as great a podium watch as any player in the NFL that isn't a quarterback. Like, anytime Terry McLaurin's on the podium and I'm sitting at my desk at the network, I stop what I'm doing and watch because I think that guy's great. I think he's a great example for that franchise on the field and in the community. I think he's a guy that deserves more national attention, not only on the field, but in the community as well.
Zero disagreement. I actually had a great quick catch up with Terry today. I haven't seen him in a while, and just was reminded how genuine salt of the earth that dude is. Could not agree more. All right, enjoy Rams training camp. Tell my old friend Sean I say hello, and appreciate your time here on the show, man. We'll have to do it again during the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig will do it. I'll send Sean your best. New baby coming in not till October. Yep, it's a little boy.
It is.
So I'm sure he'll be calling plays by the time he's 2 years old.
And he'll remember everyone he calls for the rest of his life, because that is truly.
He will never forget.
That is truly the McVay trick. All right, Andrew, appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Gotcha, man. Talk to you soon.
Andrew Siciliano, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. We get back. Quick preview of tonight's matchup, Women's World Cup, U.S. Women's National Team, and the Netherlands, and real things, real people said, into real microphones.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
How about monster quarterback contracts? Well, at least one monster quarterback contract, and one that is slightly less of a monster than it used to be. The big one is Justin Herbert. 5 years, $262.5 million. He is the next in line as the richest quarterback in the league. Now the question is, what does Joe Burrow get? Also extension eligible in Cincinnati. As for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, they reworked his contract. Rodgers, whose career earnings are very high, had been on pace to make nearly $130 million over the next couple of seasons. Now he is going to, quote unquote, just make 75. Takes a $33 million pay cut. The deal, though, is 2 years fully guaranteed for $75 million. That, according to ESPN and the NFL Network. That is what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Quick preview of tonight's game, Netherlands, U.S. Women's National Team here on the show, and then we will get to real things, real people said into real microphones. For a more extensive preview of tonight's game, you can go to our podcast page. Just, if you do us a favor, wait like 12 minutes. Actually, it's not even that. At this point, by the time we get out and we're into the final commercial break of the show, it's like 7 minutes. And then you can listen to my chat with Lena Solano, who is a forward on the Washington Spirit, and get her insight, which is a pretty good insight considering, 4 of her teammates, 3 of which might start tonight, are on the team. And actually, I'll give you a little bit of a preview right now. When I asked Lena about Trinity Rodman and how she's played so far with the national team and kind of how similar that is to what Lena sees every day at practice with the Spirit.
Yeah, she's just a really a go-getter, and she's always been like that. She's like that at practice. She's helpful with me, telling me go forward, go, get that ball. So I see that with her playing with the national team, and she just wants the ball. She wants to go. She wants to attack. So I think she adds a great part in that.
I think the thing that stands out about Trinity is obviously she's tremendously fast, tremendously strong, tremendously quick. Her physical gifts are there, but she's so smart and she has such an incredible motor. And that combination of skill, speed, size, strength, and intelligence is what makes her, at 21 years old, a premier player. And you saw her impact in the first game against Vietnam. They need some creativity out on the wing because a lot of these teams are going to pack it in. And when you've got a team that's just parked the bus, you need individual brilliance. You can play prevent defense in the NFL, and then Tyreek Hill can juke 3 guys, and he's in the space, and your prevent's dead. Trinity Rodman is like that. She's Tyreek Hill-esque. She's just freakish in what she does. And by the way, so is Sophia Smith on the other side. Is what makes the U.S. so dangerous, so potent, so special, which makes what I'm about to read you hysterically funny to me. Andreas Jonker, that's my best pronunciation of the Netherlands coach, telling Jeffrey Carlisle from ESPN, quote, "In the past, the U.S. women's national team were a lot fitter than the rest of the world, but those days are over. What is left of their superiority?" And then 2, pride comes before a fall, so it's on us to show their time to fall has come. Shout out to my guy, Andre Carlisle, for retweeting those. If I was him, would not want to tick off and or motivate the U.S. women's national team. And I will also say this. The Netherlands has played a 3-back system, so the opposite of this park the bus strategy for a lot of their games. They do not have a lot of numbers necessarily at the back. They do not jam things up. There's a lot more space to operate than basically every other opponent the U.S. will play, who is still terrified of the U.S.'s combination of size, speed, strength, and skill. If this coach is arrogant enough to think, at least maybe this is my own American arrogance showing, but if he is arrogant enough to think that his athletes, who are world-class and phenomenal, can keep up with Trinity Rodman and Sophia Smith, 2 of literally the best athletes playing the sport, they are the elite of the elite, then I'm excited to see the scoreline tonight for the U.S. I'm also excited to see the potential debut of Ashley Sanchez, a Washington Spirit player who did not make her debut in the last match after Savannah DeMello got the surprise start. I wouldn't be surprised if Rose Lavelle got the start, or if whoever plays that attacking midfield position only plays 45 minutes and starts, and then Lavelle comes on in the second half. Rose getting her fitness back looks a lot better. So that's one of the lineup things I'm interested to watch tonight. Other big lineup thing I'm interested to watch is what happens at the center back position. Does Julie Ertz play again alongside Naomi Girma, or is it Alana Cook and Naomi Girma? That's what I would expect. And then Ertz maybe to come in later in the game for Girma as they try to limit the minutes of these players depending on what the score line is. Or does Ertz kind of sit in reserve and ultimately give a rest to Andy Sullivan after about 60 minutes as Andy went full 90 in the last match. So you're at this point in the tournament where obviously it's the World Cup. You got to win every match. And if the U.S. wins tonight, and then they obviously have one more game against Portugal, but if they win tonight, it's their second win in the group. They're automatically through to the next round. And then it's a matter of, are they through as the first team out of the group or the second? But you are also trying to make sure that you are fresh and healthy for the knockout rounds. So there is a little bit of squad rotation that tends to happen. I'd expect to see Lynn Williams tonight as well, Christy Mewis, all players who didn't play in the first match. But as I sit here, Anthony, in my Ashley Sanchez jersey, ready to go tonight, hope my girl, number 2 on the U.S., number 10 on the Spirit, number 1 in our hearts, gets to see the pitch tonight. All right. That's the preview of the game. Kickoff at 9:30 tonight. And then we got, again, a fuller preview on the podcast feed with Lena Solano from the Spirit. By the way, Spirit are having a watch party again tonight at the Bullpen. It was jammed last time out. 9 o'clock kickoff. I know there's a meet and greet with some Spirit players at 8. So if you want to check that out at the Bullpen, you can do that. And you listen to the podcast with Lena Solano on the way. All right. That is it for the preview. Anthony, do we have time for real things?
By the time the Stinger plays, and yeah, we don't have time.
We don't have time. So you're just gonna have to tell me what's my out time here.
Your out time here is 55:36.
So we have 36 seconds left in the show. Are you going anywhere to watch the game tonight?
I will be in my humble abode after, eating some. I think I want Popeyes today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I might treat myself to a spicy chicken sandwich and some fries and watch the game at 9 p.m.
Yep, carb up, get ready to go. And then tomorrow I'll see you back in Ashburn.
Yes,
Bro,
bright and early.
Can we do no traffic tomorrow? Whoever ran in, I mean, I hope whoever ran into each other is okay because there was a nasty crash this morning. But that traffic, woo, buddy. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Hoffman Show on the Team 980.